Yeah. Well, of course, he's just coming off of the summit, which was just. Did he go? Oh, to the summit. Not you. The top of you. Well, I was in Australia, so we were all set. And then that day, and it's really everything. So I was out.
Oh yeah, I don't know.
See, Coach Schotter did that to me a few years ago. License plate, remember it like so who's this?
I'm not sure.
Please don't have the same Can you
Sure. And then I think we're probably ready to get going, if that's okay,
be
Governor.
able to defend myself? What's that?
Then I think we're ready to get going.
Sure.
Yeah.
And Ryan left already. Yes. No, we were sad. I tell people appreciate the team.
Good day, everyone. My name is Jim Ogsbury, and I'm proud to serve as the Executive Director of the Western Governors Association. It's an organization serving the governors of the 19 westernmost states and 3 Pacific territories. And it's an honor to welcome you to beautiful Lake Tahoe for the inaugural workshop of the Western Governors Biosecurity and Invasive Species Initiative. It's the signature policy effort of WGA Chair and current Hawaii Governor David Ige. As national politics have become more polarized, as our federal government has become more dysfunctional, people throughout the country and of all political stripes have increasingly looked to states and their governors for bipartisan leadership and for solutions to the problems facing our nation and our region. Western governors have risen to that challenge in a big way. Through WGA, the governors of the West have developed substantive policy and generated creative ideas to sustain and develop the economies and the environments of the great American West. I commend your attention to their detailed and policy-rich resolutions on energy, water, forest fires, species conservation, public lands management, and a host of other critical resource issues. Though these detailed resolutions articulate measured and thoughtful principles, Western governors are men and women of action. As valuable as their policy pronouncements are, the governors are determined to get things done. Consequently, they have leveraged their collective resources and influence to effect positive change on a bipartisan basis and landscape scale. Many of their accomplishments have issued from the initiatives of WGA chairmen. For example, when Governor Brian Sandoval of Nevada served as chair of WGA, he created the Western Governors Drought Forum, a powerful mechanism for states to develop, synthesize, and share best practices in water conservation and drought mitigation. Governor Matt Mead of Wyoming launched the Western Governors Species Conservation and Endangered Species Act initiative, which generated the most constructive big tent conversation about the ESA in a generation, assembling a diverse body of stakeholders from industry, the environmental community, government, sportsman groups, and many others. The governors crafted specific regulatory and legislative recommendations to improve the efficacy of the Endangered Species Act. And these suggestions are at the very heart of ongoing ESA reform efforts both in Congress and the administration. Governor Steve Bullock of Montana developed the Western Governors National Forest and Rangeland Management Initiative, which similarly engaged a wide group of experts and stakeholders to generate ideas to improve public land management regimes. 1/3 of the legislative recommendations produced by that initiative have already been enacted into law. And that's an environment where very little gets enacted into law. And we continue to work with the administration to promote the governor's regulatory recommendations for improved stewardship of public lands. I'm delighted that the governors are now unleashing their convening power and expending even more energy to confront the scourge of invasive species. The impacts of invasive species in the West are as pervasive as they are underreported. The spread of noxious weeds threatens ranching communities and fuels wildfires. Invasive species can radically alter habitat, compounding threats to wildlife and endangering species. The competition that non-native species poses to native game impacts hunting and fishing. Agriculture, forestry, tourism, all of these industries are struggling to eradicate, contain, and mitigate the insidious impacts of invasive species. It's important to note that this is not new turf for WGA. Rather, Governor Ige's initiative builds on a very significant body of work executed by the association in recent years. In 2016, Western Governors formed the WGA Invasive Species Advisory Group, which provides technical assistance to inform our work in this space. This 30-member group is comprised of state and federal agency staff, nonprofits, industry, and academic groups. In the last year, the association developed the WGA Invasive Species Data Protocol, a new regional standard to guide the interagency exchange of invasive species occurrence data. This new protocol, a deliverable of the 2018 Invasive Species Data Workshop, will help increase the availability of invasive species data to land managers, as well as reduce redundancy between major invasive species data management systems in the West. In March, WGA published a compendium of the top 50 invasive species in the West. This is a first-of-its-kind regional invasive species tool to facilitate the cross-border work of invasive species managers and the prioritization of regional invasive species projects. And we continue to work collaboratively with the Department of the Interior to combat the spread of invasive quagga and zebra mussels in the West. The Western Governors Biosecurity and Invasive Species Initiative represents an even greater commitment of resources and attention to this issue and these ongoing efforts. During the coming months, WGA will conduct a series of initiative workshops across the West. These will provide a forum for experts and stakeholders to examine biosecurity and invasive species issues, assess developing threats, survey best practices, and investigate emerging technologies that will help protect Western lands and economies from the spread of non-native species. The dates and locations for upcoming workshops are October 11 and 12 in Cheyenne, Wyoming, November 14th in Helena, Montana, and December 9th and 10th in Hawaii. At each of these workshops, governors and participants will focus on different aspects of biosecurity and invasive species in the West. We'll then host a series of webinars to drill down even more deeply on discrete issues that arise from these discussions. To us, this is a big deal, and we are so appreciative that you are all here to contribute your time and your intellectual capital and your expertise. A project of this scope also requires financial resources, and we are very grateful to our workshop sponsor, Edison International, a proven innovator which has been providing reliable, safe, and affordable electricity for over 130 years. We're also very appreciative of our federal partners, the Natural Resources Conservation Service and the Bureau of Reclamation. Punctuating the importance of this issue, we are joined today by two of the most prominent leaders in the West. John Laird, our moderator, is the Secretary of the California Natural Resources Agency. The budget for this critical department of California government is larger than that of some Western states. A former legislator, Mr. Laird is a renowned leader in resource and conservation issues, and we could not be more grateful for his central participation in this effort. WGA has benefited richly from the leadership of Nevada Governor Brian Sandoval. A former chair of the Western Governors Association, he recently concluded a term as chair of the National Governors Association. His collaborative disposition, his thoughtful approach to policy, and his purposeful commitment to improving the lives of his neighbors and his countrymen all well exemplify the bipartisan ethos of WGA. It is a profound honor to introduce the 29th governor of the great state of Nevada, the Honorable Brian Sandoval.
Jim, thank you, and good morning, everybody. Welcome to Lake Tahoe, Nevada. And truly, this is one of my most favorite places on earth. And today is just one of those days that we're so thankful that there's such a natural resource in our backyard and in our state. And it really is a perfect venue to have this discussion with regard to invasive species. I hope all of you arrived on Friday and not today, so you had the opportunity to enjoy Lake Tahoe, because I know we had incredible weather here. Jim, thank you for the kind introduction and for your leadership with regard to the Western Governors Association. And John, welcome back. John and I have been working together many, many years, and it really has been a true privilege and honor to be working with you and Governor Brown of the great state of California. And I wish he were here, but please send him my regards. And as I said, we can think of no better place to demonstrate state cooperation on important issues than Lake Tahoe. So again, I'm thrilled that you're here, and this is the beginning of a really important conversation. And I understand also that we have a live stream as well, so for those of the individuals that are participating on the internet, I welcome you as well. So today we're going to be talking about one of the most persistent and challenging environmental issues in the West, invasive species. I know sometimes when people hear the word invasive species, they think of the latest horror movie, but you know, it's something that's true, and it's a reality. The impacts of invasive species are staggering. The Nature Conservancy has estimated that in the United States, invasive species cost over $120 billion, billion with a B, to manage every year and affect an area of more than 100 million acres, an area the size of California, and have contributed to the decline of 42% of threatened and endangered species. The spread of invasive species is an underlying cause of many resource challenges in the West. So far this year, unfortunately and tragically, over 1 million acres have burned in Nevada alone, and I'm sure John will talk about the statistic in California. And just recently, we had the largest fire in Nevada history, almost 500,000 acres. That's 686 square miles, almost half the size of Rhode Island. Casey, our state fire, is here with us today, and I really thank you and all the men and women who've worked so hard this summer to fight our fires. The fire was not only fueled partly by invasive cheatgrass, but will now be in an area that invasives will flourish. And Nevada's not alone, as I mentioned. Record-setting fires driven by invasive grasses are becoming more common in the Great Basin. Beyond wildfire management, the movement of agricultural pests, pathogens, and other non-native species impact agriculture, human health, and national defense. Invasive species impact nearly every economic sector that depends upon Western working lands, and by doing so, they can interrupt the very social fabric of the West. For all these reasons and many more, it's timely that Hawaii Governor David Ige has made the Biosecurity Invasive Species Initiative his central policy effort as WGA Chair. And I was going to pause. Do we have representatives from Hawaii here with us? well, if they're watching, no, I just wanted to mention I have a lot of respect for Governor Ige as well, and he is I think that's the camera, right? I have a lot of great respect for Governor Ige as well, and I wish he could be here, but I know it's a very long trip from Hawaii, but he is truly a great leader. So today's workshop marks the beginning of our regional conversation on the threats that these invaders pose. Our goal is to develop a regional strategy and a set of new policy tools and best management practices to address one of the greatest and most persistent threats to Western ecosystems. And as I mentioned, I can't think of a more fitting place to begin this conversation than Lake Tahoe. As a jewel of the Sierra Nevada, Lake Tahoe reminds us of what is at stake in the fight against aquatic invasive species. And I don't know if many of you have had time to get to the beach and see the clarity of our water, but these blue waters set within the forested mountains draw millions of people here each year. But if you look more closely, you will see that there is a fight to preserve these resources for future generations. Every day, Lake Tahoe is threatened by aquatic invasive species, which can cloud the lake's famous clear blue waters. The challenge is to make species that have already taken hold in the lake while also preventing additional invasives from coming in. Invasive crayfish are found in most parts of the lake, but particularly in the rocky areas. And although not the highest priority invasive species, and frankly, complete eradication is probably not attainable, the Nevada Department of State Lands does issue commercial permits for companies to harvest crayfish with no limit. Lake Tahoe does have Asian clams, which are a management problem. Nevada has funded efforts at Marla Bay and San Harbor to lay rubber mats, literally rubber mats, down on the lake bottom, which effectively smother the clams. This is very expensive and has helped manage the spread of the clams, but has not proven to eliminate them altogether. Milfoil and curly-leaf pondweed are two of the invasive plants found at Lake Tahoe. They are both found in marinas and more shallow areas. The Lake Tahoe Keys is ground zero for both of these plants. Partners at Lake Tahoe have funded divers to actually pull these weeds, and the rubber mats have been used for those as well. Recently, experimental technology using UV light to kill them has been done in partnership with the Tahoe Fund. And Amy Berry is here today, and why don't you raise your hand a little higher, Amy? But as well as the universities and the Tahoe Keys Property Owners Association. But just a quick infomercial for the Tahoe Fund. I didn't have the opportunity to attend their dinner this year, but they have done tremendous work at Lake Tahoe, and it is the perfect example of a public-private partnership where individuals come together to work for the same goal, which is to preserve our lake. So all types of applications are being reviewed and considered by basin scientists and public agencies to continue the fight against these plants and animals. Prevention of additional new invasive species, particularly the quagga mussel, and you're going to hear and see something like that, so I'm not going to ruin your surprise, Bill, with your prop. But it's a robust boat inspection and decontamination program which is nationally recognized, along with a public education program. And if you drove from Carson City like I did today, you would see the public inspection place where those inspections are conducted. This program is another example of all public agencies and private entities working together to make sure that these terrible mussels don't invade Lake Tahoe. Cave Lake and San Harbor, which is nearby as well, and our most visited state park in our entire inventory for state parks for the state of Nevada, do yeoman's work to make sure that no boats are launched at their marinas that have not been inspected or decontaminated. The Nevada Department of Wildlife also has an aquatic invasive species program that requires boat owners to register and verify inspection prior to launch, and requires a decal to be displayed on the boats. The surrounding forests are beset by forest pests and wildfire fueled by invasive species. Every single day, a group of committed professionals, volunteers, and concerned citizens work to combat these invading species and reduce the risks that they pose. This collaborative group of federal, state, and local governments, coupled with nonprofits, NGOs, and citizen scientists, work together and tirelessly to protect Lake Tahoe's resources for the years to come. So that brings us to the purpose of this workshop, and it's to examine the lessons learned from these efforts and apply them throughout the region and throughout the West. Lake Tahoe is also known as a laboratory for invasive species innovations in terms of both technology and policy. This workshop will also be used as a venue to discuss the new and innovative tools, technologies, and best management practices being employed right here. The collaboration we see at Lake Tahoe is possible because of the control and management of invasive species is truly a bipartisan issue. These invaders ignore all boundaries, borders, and political parties. That was supposed to be a joke. You're all supposed to laugh at that. So we're all, no matter where we come from throughout the West, we're impacted by invasive species and their effects on our ecosystems and our economies. This is indeed a regional conversation. We have invasive species managers from all over the West in this room who will share with us their experiences and expertise on combating the spread of invasive species in the West. For this reason and more, I can think of no better organization to tackle this issue than the Western Governors Association. And I know I'm a little biased, but I have 8 years of experience now, and I can confidently say, and I know some people might be upset, I am the recent outgoing chairman of the National Governors Association, but there is no more collaborative group than the Western Governors Association, and I consider the Western Governors, or some of them, my closest friends. They are incredible people who are just absolutely devoted to working together for the benefit of everyone. We've been collaborating, as I mentioned, for years to address the threats that invasive species pose. Western governors engage with Congress, and that's, again, I can account for that because I've attended those meetings in Washington, D.C. when we go there, advocating for legislation to improve states' ability to accomplish this goal. We work with the administration to find ways to contain invasive quagga and zebra mussels in Lake Mead. We work together with all the lakes and streams throughout the West. And we are working to improve how land managers communicate invasive species data between agencies, and that's something else that's incredibly important. The WGA Biosecurity Invasive Species Initiative will be a continuation of this work, and as I mentioned, Governor Ige is leading the way. And again, he's not here, but I asked for some notes to talk a little bit about what's happening in Hawaii. The state of Hawaii, in a broad coalition of stakeholders led by the Department of Agriculture and the Department of Land and Natural Resources, has adopted the state's first interagency and comprehensive biosecurity plan to protect Hawaii's agriculture, environment, economy, and health. The scope of the Hawaii Interagency Biosecurity Plan addresses 3 biosecurity areas, including pre-border, for example, agreements on handling and treatment of products before they enter Hawaii; border, for example, inspection authorities and technologies; and post-border, for example, tools and capacity for response after invasive species have become established. The benefit of a comprehensive interagency plan is that it facilitates actions and policies across a wide range of agencies and partners. The plan includes roughly 150 action items assigned to various agencies and stakeholders with specific details on how and when to best implement each action. The Interagency Biosecurity Plan is the state's guiding document for biosecurity improvements over the coming decade, and I'm sure it's a template for what we can do in the other states throughout the West. I anticipate at the end of this process, we will be able to find new tools and bipartisan solutions to these pressing issues. So the focus of this workshop is on cross-boundary collaboration, as well as the prevention, control, and management of invasive species. And we've talked about the future workshops that are going to be happening, but I've always said imitation is the greatest form of flattery, and that's one of the best things about all of us as land managers and individuals that represent the states that we are so proud of and that we love so much, is that we may learn an idea from Nevada, from California, from Hawaii, from Idaho, from Colorado. I could go on, and we can take those home and use them for the benefit of our constituencies. And I love it. when somebody sees something that we're doing in Nevada and takes it to another state. So I really encourage all of you to work together and take that time to make that introduction if you don't know one another already. And as I said, I can't think of a better place to have a workshop. I can't think of a better time to have an issue like this. And again, Jim, thank you for your leadership for the Western Governors Association. We are excited and proud in Nevada that we have the opportunity to host the first meeting, and we look forward to the meetings that are coming ahead. So with that, I'm pleased to hand the workshop over to John Laird, who is the California Secretary for Natural Resources. And I whispered to him when Jim mentioned or asked him about what the total budget is for his natural resources, and indeed, his budget alone is bigger than the budget for the entire state of Nevada, $10 billion versus my general fund of $8 billion. But that just gives a good idea. But again, I'm really proud of this partnership with California and Nevada. I know we've had some pretty wicked wildfires in both states. Governor Brown and I periodically talk on the phone. If he or California needs something, we lend the resources that we have in the great state of Nevada, and vice versa. When we're in trouble and Nevada needs something, California is always there for us. So it's truly a partnership and something that I'm proud of, and we work together here at Lake Tahoe as well. With that,